Warren Beatty's list of women he dated with the worst hygiene. Warren Beatty, a man who reportedly dated almost every leading actress in Hollywood from 1960 to 1990, kept a secret beyond his legendary conquests. Behind closed car windows after dropping off his famous dates, Beatty would deliver devastatingly precise critiques of their personal hygiene to his longtime driver, Michael Reynolds. Warren had the most sensitive nose in Hollywood, revealed Reynolds, who drove Beatty from 1965 to 1992. The man could detect a mist shower from across a crowded room. Unlike his friend Jack Nicholson, who bragged openly about his exploits, Beatty maintained an unsettling detachment when discussing romantic disappointments. No raised voice, no apparent emotion, just observations delivered in the same measured tone he used on film sets. After dates, he'd slide into the backseat and immediately open the window regardless of weather, Reynolds told me during our interview in his modest Sherman Oaks home. Then would come what I called the assessment. Some comment about how his date hadn't changed her sheets in weeks or had applied perfume to mask not showering. For a man whose own grooming routine bordered on obsessive, Reynolds reports that Beatty would shower multiple times daily and discard shirts after a single, wearing personal hygiene and partners represented a non-negotiable standard. He expected women to be perfectly maintained machines, Reynolds said, shaking his head. No human smells, no morning breath, no evidence of actual bodies. It was impossible. Tonight, I reveal the 5 iconic women who reportedly failed impossible standards, each representing a different violation in his private hygiene hierarchy based on the first-hand accounts of the man who drove them home. It's just a quest, Madonna. The calculated scent smelled like incense, sweat, and ambition. It was overwhelming. The 1990 set of Dick Tracy paired Warren Beatty with Madonna, creating a brief but volatile relationship that Reynolds witnessed from the driver's seat of Beatty's car. I picked them up after the premiere at Grauman's Chinese Theater, Reynolds recalled, still visibly amused by the memory. They'd walked the red carpet together, attended the after-party for about an hour. Then Beatty suddenly emerged alone. He slid into the back seat, looking genuinely rattled. According to Reynolds, Beatty sat silently for several blocks before finally speaking. He just said, "She changes her scent throughout the evening." Reynolds, "Did you notice?" Reynolds remembered. Then he launched into this detailed inventory of her perfume strategy, like he was describing a military operation. Beatty allegedly told his driver, "She smelled like incense, sweat, and ambition." It was overwhelming. From my conversation with Reynolds, it seems Beatty wasn't disturbed by Madonna smelling bad in any conventional sense, but by what he perceived as her strategic approach to scent, something I gather threatened his own carefully constructed control. A few nights later, I was waiting outside her place when Warren came storming out, Reynolds continued. He got in carrying his jacket rather than wearing it. He claimed she'd sprayed her perfume in it when he wasn't looking. He seemed genuinely disturbed, like some boundary had been violated. The relationship ended days later, adding Madonna to Beatty's mental list of hygiene disappointments for reasons that had less to do with cleanliness than with his apparent need to maintain sensory control. Longer than anyone else in this room except Shirley. We did our first screen test together. Jane Fonda, revolutionary rejection. Warren said she had a thing against deodorant and it showed. Jane Fonda in 1971 was at the height of both her career and political activism when she briefly connected with Warren Beatty. Their relationship coincided with her most radical period, creating tensions that Reynolds witnessed firsthand. It picked them up for a Vietnam veterans benefit in the Valley, Reynolds recalled. It was July, about 95 degrees. Warren got an already looking annoyed. The moment we pulled away, he turned to him and said, "Reynolds, she refused house deodorant before a fundraiser in his heat. She gave me a lecture about aluminum and corporate chemicals." According to Reynolds, Beatty seemed genuinely bewildered by Fonda's deliberate rejection of conventional hygiene products. Warren said she had a thing against deodorant, and it showed, Reynolds told me. He kept saying, "I didn't understand how someone can spend hours perfecting her hair for a protest but refuse basic hygiene products." The relationship deteriorated over several weeks, with Beatty becoming increasingly fixated on what he saw as contradictions in Fonda's approach to personal care. Reynolds witnessed the final confrontation when he picked them up after another political event. They came out mid-argument. He remembered. "I couldn't hear everything, but Warren was saying something about natural alternatives, and she responded with what sounded like American hygiene neurosis." They rode back to Beverly Hills in complete silence. Later that night, Reynolds drove Beatty alone to aid in a meeting. He was still rattled, Reynolds recalled. "He told me, Reynolds, she called me toxicolic. Me? Can you imagine?" From what I gather, Fonda's alleged offense wasn't poor hygiene in any objective sense, but a political rejection of the commercial products Beatty considered essential. A stance that apparently challenged not just his physical preferences, but his unexamined assumptions. "Face and sort of my Nicky's falling down, and Yin didn't like that at all." Joan Collins' chemical warfare over perfume to the point of suffocation. Warren Beatty's relationship with Joan Collins in the late 1950s preceded Reynolds' employment, but the driver witnessed how this early connection affected Beatty's sensory judgments decades later. "We were driving to an industry dinner in 1977 where Joan was present." Reynolds recalled their first encounter in years. "Warren spent their entire ride giving me detailed instructions about keeping the car windows open afterward if she came near it." According to Reynolds, Beatty launched into a comprehensive critique of what he considered Collins' excessive approach to fragrance. "He told me she was over-perfumed to the point of suffocation." Reynolds said he claimed her scent had somehow permeated the upholstery of his car back in the 50s, requiring professional cleaning. While many of Beatty's hygiene complaints focused on insufficient cleanliness, Collins apparently represented the opposite problem, what he considered an artificial, overwhelming approach to scent. Warren had this theory that a woman should smell neither natural nor artificial. Reynolds explained he wanted some impossible middle ground where you could detect either human scent or perfume. Joan was his example of going too far in the artificial direction. The intensity of Beatty's reaction to Collins' fragrance choices became clear to Reynolds during a brief encounter at their event. They had kissed at the bar, Reynolds remembered. Just a quick greeting, maybe 15 seconds of interaction. When Warren returned to the car hours later, it was the first thing he mentioned. He claimed he could still taste her perfume and that it had given him a headache that required 2 aspirin. From what I gather, Collins wasn't unhygienic by any standard definition. She simply violated Beatty's narrow conception of appropriate feminine scent with what he considered excessive artificial fragrance. Cam Rouge Poolpot, who was responsible for the deaths of between 1 and 2 million people in Kampuchea, Julie Christie the morning after the love of his life, but not always fresh in the mornings. Warren Beatty's relationship with Julie Christie from 1967 to 1974 was his longest and most significant prior to his marriage. Reynolds witnessed how even this exceptional connection couldn't escape Beatty's rigid physical standards. The Julie situation was different. Reynolds acknowledged Warren genuinely loved her. His complaints weren't dismissive. They were confused, almost hurt, like Heck didn't reconcile her habits with his feelings for her. The specific issue emerged after Reynolds picked up jet-lagged Beatty from Lax following a visit to Christie's farmhouse in England. He got in looking honestly bewildered, Reynolds recalled. After a while, he just said, "Ines, she's the love of my life, but not always fresh in the mornings." He seemed genuinely disturbed that she would drink coffee and read the paper before showering or brushing her teeth. According to Reynolds, this revelation about Christie's morning routine created ongoing tension in their relationship. One of the few instances where Beatty couldn't simply end things over a hygiene disagreement. "I drove them to the McCabe and Mrs. Miller's set many mornings," Reynolds said. "Sometimes there was this palpable tension in the car. Once I overheard her say something like, 'Not everyone needs to taste like mouthwash at 6 o'clock in the morning, Warren.'" From what I gather, Christie's alleged offense existed in a category Beatty found particularly distressing, morning intimacy. Unlike casual dates who could be dismissed for hygiene violations, Christie's importance to Beatty created what appeared to be genuine internal conflict. "He actually asked me once, and this was unprecedented, whether I thought it was strange to shower immediately upon waking." Reynolds remembered Warren Beatty asking my opinion about anything was so usual that I nearly crashed the car there. I don't know. Do you ever think about it? No. Bridget Bardot, European sensibility. He said she believed soap was a tool of the patriarchy. Warren Beatty's brief encounter with French cinema icon Bridget Bardot during the 1965 Cannes Film Festival created what Reynolds described as a complete sensory crisis for his employer. I picked him up lax after Cannes, Reynolds recalled. He got in looking genuinely shaken, not his usual composed self at all. Before Whitevan left the airport, he launched into this extended monologue about French hygiene practices. According to Reynolds, Beatty seemed both repelled and fascinated by what he'd experienced, a fundamentally different approach to beauty and cleanliness than his American standards. He said she believed soap was a tool of the patriarchy. Reynolds told me that wasn't her phrasing. Obviously, it was Warren trying to process something he couldn't comprehend, a sex symbol comfortable with natural body odor. The cultural disconnect apparently reached its peak during a dinner in Cannes where Bardot's European approach to personal hygiene collided directly with Beatty's American expectations. Warren described this dinner in detail, Reynolds said. Apparently, Bardot had come directly from a yacht excursion. Nasha, just a change of clothes. At some point, she'd raise her arms, showing unshaven underarms, and laughed when she noticed his reaction. For Beatty, whose entire concept of feminine appeal centered on the careful elimination of natural processes, Bardot's comfort with bodily reality created a conflict he couldn't resolve that he kept saying, "Wine she's considered the most beautiful woman in the world." Reynolds remembered like he couldn't reconcile her beauty with what he considered poor hygiene. It fundamentally challenged his understanding of what attractiveness required. The brief connection ended